everybody, and welcome to the Maria Goncalves podcast. I'm your host, Maria Goncalves, and today we have a special guest, a local guest, uh, Daniel Rocha. So, Daniel, introduce yourselves to our listeners and our viewers.
Hello. I also go by the name of Guest, and my my business is New Moon Guidance. I am a reader. I am an astrologer. I work with biowealth scans. I do a whole bunch of nifty things, and love working with people to discover a path forward, to leave the crossroads behind, so to speak, using the tools of astrology and tarot and even sound therapy, just to, give people that little bit of extra oomph, that little extra nudge out the door, whether, trying to find a career path or looking into the world of relationships, whatever it may be. And yeah, that's me.
I love it. I love it. I find when we go on this spiritual journey, I don't know about you, but I can't stay focused on just one thing. Like, I love to explore everything because it's so much fun.
I agree 100%. And in our conversation we just had, I was saying that I'm a chaos cloud because there's just so many things to dive into in the spiritual world, but also in the world of metaphysics and working with the more left brain stuff, like the astrological charts, and it gets like really into heavy mathematics. But at the same time, there is this huge, spiritual component to it. So working with that, and the sound therapy is the same thing. It all comes down to like that vibration, those numbers, but how they influence us is pretty big.
I think that's super interesting. And today, for our topic, we were going to focus on astrology for the new year. I'm super excited to talk about astrology.
Yeah, me too. I could go on for hours talking about it. I know we don't have hours to talk about it, but when we talk astrology, we're talking about, of course, the cosmos, what's happening with the stars, the planets. But I think that astrology is much closer to home than we think, because when we really think about it, yeah, we can dive into, our horoscopes, your sun sign. And then maybe a few less people will know about their moon signs and their rising signs. But we can go into all the intricate details. And what it all comes back to is the natal chart. Now, doing a astrological talk, we can't specifically dive into, people's charts, but we can look into, and this is where astrology like really comes to play, are the themes, the cycles, and depending on the natal chart that you bring up, I air quoted that for people who are just listening on Spotify or something. This is all about realizing that astrology is this profound language that we are deciphering on the day to day. And it's just so many things involved in it, so many energies and avenues, and it changes and flows like the weather. So, yeah.
Wow. So I was just thinking, because I know we had this conversation last year, because I'm a cusp. And
Mm.
then I identify as a Scorpio. And then I had a reading and I was told, no, Maria, you're a Libra. I was like, yeah, take it back. No, I'm not. But because I'm October 23rd, so I'm like dead in the middle. And then according to the time, I don't know, give or take 10 minutes, I'm like, I'm a Libra. What? So how does that work with astrology with people that are cusps, that are right on that date? I find that super fascinating.
So this is where it gets a little tricky, because yes, you could be born at a time where your sun sign is so close to another sign that, depending on the specific time of your birth, that's why it's so important to have an accurate time, especially when you are that close to a different sign, because that will place you in one or the other. Now, that being said, if you are born closer to another sign, and this could even be leading up to like 5 days to the next sign, there's you will definitely have traits of that sign. Broad brushstrokes. Sun sign is like broad brushstroke personality things. But you have every single sign in your chart. You have every single planet in your chart. So somewhere you are going to be a Scorpio anyway. Somewhere you're going to be a Libra, and somewhere you're going to be an Aries, right? So it really depends where they fall in your chart. So you will have traits of both, Scorpio and of Libra, and you may have noticed that already. The way you can really tell, though, is if you work with an astrologer and they pull up your chart and you bring up the intricacies of your specific natal chart and just talk through it with them and see what really works. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, no, Libra makes more sense to me. Oh no, Scorpio makes more sense to me. I don't remember what we what we landed on with you. Was it Libra or is it Scorpio?
Well, it's a guess, right? Because my mom, like, I'm born in the middle of a field. It's a hospital, but it's like the middle of the field, like 50 years ago, right? So when I asked my mom, she's like, I think you were born like somewhere around 11 o'clock in the morning. But I guess 11 o'clock in the morning in the astrology world was a big deal because, like, oh, you're off by 10 minutes and then you would have been a Scorpio. And I was like, my mom could be off because she's guessing. They're just
Mhm.
like everybody's guessing. And then her memory's not as good as it was. She's 78, so I'm asking her to remember, hey, can you remember 54 years ago? What time was it? So I'm assuming a lot of people my age that came from like countries where they're born at home,
Yeah.
like back in the village. There isn't that accuracy with the watches and stuff. But yes, we talked and you came up with that I was a Libra. And I was
Mm.
like, what? And then I even remember she's like, Maria, like, I don't know how you're gonna take this, but you're not a Scorpio. I was like, no. But I will say this, everything about Scorpio is so me. And when I look at Libra, I was like, yeah, kind of not really. Yeah. So I find
Interesting.
that super interesting. Or maybe I'm in denial, like I don't know.
There could honestly be so many factors. And Scorpio would make sense in the line of work that you do because Scorpios are the big transformers, right? Not the Autobots and stuff. I'm talking about like the
Yeah.
transformers. Like you help people undergo transformations, and that includes that veil of death. And even speaking to people about it, Scorpios I find are people's greatest teachers. Very hard lessons to be learned from a Scorpio. And I feel Scorpios get a bit of a bad rap because
I got a
you
lot
talk
of
to
a bad
people,
rap.
right? Like you ask people, "What's your sign?" You're like, "I'm a Scorpio." Like, oh, Scorpio. Okay,
I
well,
get
I can
scared.
step over here now, step away. But the truth is, I mean, every sign has their pros and cons. But to define yourself by simply your sun sign, you're a Scorpio or a Libra, is extremely flawed because you are a unique human being and there are so many intricacies in your chart that no two charts are the same unless the person is born at exactly a time thousands of years in the future when the exact same configuration of planets and signs are as they are. So, you've got your moon sign, you've got where your Venus is, where your Mercury is, your Mars, and then you got the houses. So there is a lot.
So now you got me curious. So going back to my birthday, so October
Hmm.
23rd, let's pretend I was born at 1 p.m. because I know in the afternoon you're 100% a Scorpio. So does that mean everybody born on that day at exactly 1 p.m. will have the exact same chart or no?
That's a curious statement. So you can think of this globally.
Yeah.
And where the planets are in relation to the signs is going to be the same throughout the entire world. Where it differs is with latitude and longitude. And especially with the latitude of the chart. And that will greatly vary where the planets are sitting in the houses. And now you have that third dimensional aspect of astrology, and we can add more dimensions to it, where the chart won't be exactly the same. And there is the whole topic of twins as well. And how does a twin differ if they're born exactly around the same time?
Yeah.
And I read something about this. I don't recall exactly, but you're supposed to interpret the chart in a different way. I think it had something to do with draconian astrology, where one twin is like the tropical horoscope, and then one is with draconian astrology, which is a different type of astrology altogether, and it worked. Again, I don't remember who talked about this, but I remember reading and be like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. So there are truths in that someone who is born at exactly 1 p.m. on October
Yeah.
23rd will have a very similar chart. So I think more research would be needed into that, though, for sure.
That's interesting, because then it also depends where you were born, what city,
Mhm.
what country.
Exactly.
Oh, that's super fascinating. Oh,
Hmm.
I could just, like, my mind, I feel like we just went into the rabbit hole. We're not
Yes.
getting out.
There's like 500 different ones you can go into, maybe 5,000.
So now if we go into 2025, what are the energies like that for 2025?
Okay, so before we jump into that, I just want to sort of preface this by saying um, these are themes and cycles that we are talking about. And this is not meant to be like predictive astrology. Maybe there are certain things that the themes will reveal, but this is more a glimpse into what are the energies that are unfolding. And the other very important thing with astrology is that it's never just, okay, we're at this month and this day and this time, there's a planetary activation happening, boom, something big is happening. That's not how astrology works. We always have to, and you can go back as far as you want, but we always have to go back to what happened before that. And we don't do that in astrology, doing a reading for a client, let's say, because that would take way too long, and you could do a reading for hours, days. So we look at certain events that have happened that have led up to certain key points, and you can do that with history. You can do that with the future, but I'm going to be talking about the themes. And I mean, we're kind of touching base here with what we just discussed, where no matter where you are in the world, the planet is going to be in that sign. Like you're somewhere else in the world doesn't mean that the moon is suddenly going to be a different phase in a different sign. No, it's all the same. And because of that, these themes are actually global.
Wow.
They, however, may present differently depending where you are in the world. And this is true for politics, this is true for health, this is true for weather. And weather is a big research, a big thing I'm doing right now with astrology, because I've been finding that reading weather charts has given me a lot of insight into so many other factors. And then it got me thinking, well, if energy is so fluid, then how is it that when let's say, there's a big world event where a lot of people get angry, right? And I focus on that because anger can be a very powerful emotion. And how is it that all of that energy gets dissipated and creates weather? Like in a way, it influences the energy around you. Which influences other people, which in turn influences the energy around that big group of people, and then it all keeps going into the macrocosm, which is going expanding to like a larger and larger scale. So I'm prefacing with all this because I think it's important to realize
You're in the
that
rabbit hole.
we're in the rabbit hole, yes, but that everything influences one another. And we go into the health, we go into the politics, like we go into like the big macro topics, and then into the micro stuff like my relationship, my health, how I'm feeling for that day is likely because of something happening elsewhere in the world. So when we think of Scorpio, for example, we think of a sign that's very transforming. We think of a sign that is very deep and can like really sting you, where it hurts. Well, when we are talking about an event on Earth where Scorpio is heavily influenced, you're going to see that theme come up a lot, where a lot of people are getting hurt deep, not topically, but like just something like really deep, and it could even be go as far as poison or venom as well, right? So health wise, you may see more people thematically, again, not necessarily it's happening to people, going into hospitals and things with maybe getting stung, getting bitten, getting more like venom in their system, right? I'm not saying that's what Scorpio is all about. So don't take
I'm
offense.
getting such a bad rap. Okay, so then I have a question for you, because you talked about anger as a collective. So then what about healing as a collective, or the miracle spots? Like if you go to Portugal and you have like Fatima, so that as a collective, people go there and there's so much faith and devotion and belief in miracles. So how does that affect the world astrologically? Because I never thought about that. Like events affecting the world astrologically or vice versa. Like, how does that play out? Does that make
Right.
sense what I said?
Yeah, I think so. So, and if not, then we can revisit it. But so healing as a collective has become a profound thing in this world. And you see a lot of movements happening right now where there is things that are shifting away from the norm and going into like alternative healing, but also like look at Unify, right? Where they have these like big collaborative meditations in the world, and you can participate no matter where you are in the world. And the same thing with World Sound Healing Day, where like everyone just kind of got together and played instruments or played healing music, chants, rhythms, drumming. When you get into these big collective modes, you see profound transformations. But something led up to that too,
Yeah.
right? So, what events led up to that? And I'm going to point a finger to Pluto.
Oh,
And Pluto in Aquarius. No, I'm not going to say, hey, God, but I mean,
how you're gonna go, and God,
spirit. But God, yes, because astrology is
universe.
a divine language, it's an expression of God. And whoever the God of your understanding is, right? This
Yeah.
is not the man with the gray beard sitting in the clouds. This is whoever the God of your understanding is, right? And that divine expression of language is astrology. And when we talk about the generational planets, like the slow moving planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, we can go to Saturn as well. When these planets shift into new signs or do a big change of sorts, that's when you see a lot of the big stuff happening. And it may not happen all at once, but you will notice those themes as long as that planet's in that sign, especially when the planet gets to the middle of that sign. Pluto in Aquarius specifically, and this is one of the things we're going to be talking about now, leading from 2024 and going into 2025. So Pluto went into Aquarius on November, I believe it was November the 19th. So
Okay.
very, very recently. And it's not to say that as soon as that happened, boom, everything's happening now. Everything we started feeling those effects as Pluto started to approach Aquarius because it was in the sign of Capricorn. And having shifted into the sign of Aquarius, which it will be now for roughly 20 years. So we'll see it be in Aquarius, I think, until about the year 2043. And going from 2024 up into the 2030s, we're going to start seeing some shifts. And I'll talk to you about that here too. Aquarius is the sign of rebellion. It's the sign of change. It's the sign of innovation. And these innovations are coming through these grandiose, like these healing events, these world healing cycles that we've been seeing, and like jumps into different forms of medicine and new structures, because Aquarius is all about the collapse of old systems and old structures. And a planet as profound as Pluto, moving as slowly as it is, just transiting into that sign, we are seeing that 2024 is going to start. Now you're going to notice new systems coming in and old systems starting to get subbed out, right? And we are also in Aquarius season. So this could also be rebellion against authority. This could be where people have had enough, and we start to see, we're going to the world of mundane astrology here, but where people start to see changes in government. And I'm talking like it could be drastic changes. So we could be seeing that in 2025, because people, you cannot be in the old system, in the old power structures anymore, in the old way of thinking, when we have this big Aquarius influence happening.
So my question for you is, if we break it down to me, because astrology, when people go for readings, it's about them, right?
Yes.
So I get the big world thing, but then I'm thinking, well, what about me?
Yeah.
So when you talk about Aquarius and change and that, so is that gonna affect each of the astrological signs, like us as people, not as a consciousness, but just as an individual?
100%. There is something I always tell people, and that is the natal chart promise. You always have to go back to your natal chart, your birth chart, and associate that chart with the energies of the now. And this is where an astrologer does their work. They can pull up a chart of the now, they can pull up a chart of what are called lunar returns, which are like monthly readings, solar returns, which are like your birthday till the next year. Like they're very specific readings. But you always have to go back to your natal chart to see how any astrological influence is going to be impacting you. And in the case of Aquarius, I would look to see, for example, where Pluto and Aquarius would be sitting in relation to your natal chart.
Oh, okay.
There
So
may not, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
will it be different for each person?
More or less. I mean, there are only so many places that that configuration can be, and the more complex the configuration gets, the more unique it gets. So another example, like Pluto and Aquarius, Pluto is such a slow-moving planet that the themes that are introduced are definitely more on a global scale as opposed to an individual scale. But
Okay.
depending where Pluto sits in your natal chart is how it unfolds to you, how those events unfold to you. And when we get to the faster moving planets like the moon, Mercury, Venus, these are the things that you will now start to feel on a day-to-day basis, or maybe not at all, because they move so quickly, and especially the moon. And we can talk about any configuration. Another big one I look into for people are eclipses. Where does when a solar eclipse happens, especially solar, where does that solar eclipse sit in relation to your natal chart specifically? And that is the area of your life that is going to be influenced by the eclipse. And there are so many other like specific avenues we can go into for that as well.
So then my next question is, if I were to book a reading with you, because I always find this fascinating when I try to book reading, when I try and book readings with different astrologists, and some will be like, you have to do a natal chart. And in my mind, I'm
Mhm.
thinking like tarot, and I'm like, but I already had a natal chart. Why do I need to do another one with you? Why can't I just go and do like I call it like the birthday one, the one is that what you call it? Like you do it on your birthday for 12 months ahead? Like explain that to us people that want to get astrology readings, but I find sometimes some people's websites, it feels so overwhelming, it feels so confusing, and then I give up. And I was like,
I
I can't
mean,
navigate this.
I'm guilty for that too. My website's not perfect
Oh, I
because
haven't
there's
been on your website yet.
okay.
I don't know. It'll probably be just perfect. You don't know that.
Hey, well, I mean, after I explain it, because I'm speaking to it from a perspective of my website, so I guess
Yes.
it'll make a little more sense when you go there. But okay, so it is important for an astrologer to have your birth chart information, and usually to do a natal chart first, because that'll open up that astrologer's interpretation and impression of you, right? And
Okay.
how it relates to them and their specific way of doing astrology. That being said, it can get tiresome and old if you go to this astrologer, that astrologer, that astrologer, and say natal chart, and they're like natal chart, natal chart, natal chart. It's like, but I've gotten it done and I know my natal chart.
Yeah.
So I think the best way to approach that then is see if the astrologer can just, take a glance at it. They don't have to, do a full blown reading out of it. One client I worked with, I just pulled up the natal chart, even though I've never worked with them before, and I just integrated that into a solar return. And so basically, we touched upon elements of the natal chart. And I think a solar return is a very good one to do. That's looking at the year ahead, the 12 months, but it starts, believe it or not, like about 3 months leading up to your birthday,
Oh,
and then up to your birthday of the next year. That's how a solar return is generally read. And you can look at it's very thematic. You can look at overarching themes and influences and what areas of your life are going to be more influenced this coming year. That's a solar return. Some astrologers do lunar returns, which is like the month ahead. So you could essentially get a reading every month with a lunar return chart. And then, of course, natal charts are given. And then you have all these other branches that are opening up. Astrocartography is another big one, right? Where you can look at what part of the world influences you in what way, and where in the world you'd have the best meditation, where in the world you would go for the best career potential, maybe where you live now and how that influences you, and your home and where it's located in relation to what are called planetary lines. That's a whole another world we can dive into.
oh,
Um,
that's so interesting. Because I've heard of
yeah,
people go for astrology readings for their weddings, for engagements.
yes, that is
Oh,
called
that's what you're talking about. Oh, that's super fascinating.
that's electional astrology. You can get so what an astrologer will do is they'll look at specific dates. Like you'll give them a range of dates, and
Yeah.
then they'll look at those dates and tell you which date or time is best for the wedding or to travel. I'm finding with weather astrology, I've had people coming to me saying, "What's the weather going to be like when I go on this trip?" And weather is so finicky, honestly, but I'm having so much fun with it because I've had affirmations already about that. One example was someone I know went to the Azores and they asked me about the weather there. And they said, I'm kind of worried because this is hurricane season right now, and I don't want to go when that happens. And so I pulled up a few charts, and I told them it's going to be pretty rainy, like towards the end of your trip. And I feel like you're going to be between hurricanes. So you're not going to get that while you're on the trip, but there's definitely going to there's going to be one after. And sure enough, they go on this trip. weather is, wild as can be, as island weather is, um, but decent weather. And then it rained towards the end.
Yeah.
And then about a week to a week and a half later, there was a hurricane. Didn't hit it, but it went by the Azores. So I'm like, this is great affirmation. Thank you. So, you can dive into all different kinds of worlds.
Oh, I didn't even realize the island's got hurricanes. I have a friend that's traveling there now, but before she went, she's like, "What do I need to know about Portugal?" I'm like, "It's rain season. Bring an umbrella. Maybe you'll get sun, maybe you'll get rain. Bring an umbrella because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
their winter right now, so it rains, and that's just yeah." So I find this super interesting. Uh, Different cultures are more into astrology than others. So,
Mhm.
which cultures do you find are more into like, are Canadians really into astrology or not really? Like, are there certain countries that are more into astrology than others?
I think it depends on how you frame that question because how we're into astrology, it's people receiving astrological insights and readings versus, I think it's safe to say the entire world at some point has been basked in the world of astrology. They just interpreted it and came to understanding the movements of the cosmos in their own unique ways.
Yeah.
So, as far as receiving astrological insights, I think North America has seen that, of course, that really big boom, and especially in the States. And Canada, maybe a little less so in Canada, but again, we're seeing like more shifts in Canada now going to that route of alternative healing, but also of alternative means of gaining insights. It's not just like cut and dry logic reasoning. Like we're going into intuitive realms here, which astrology is really good at interpreting.
Oh, I love that. I know for I was talking with one of my cousins, she's from Brazil, and when it was my birthday, this is why I actually ended up getting, what did you call it? A sun reading, like one for each month, like for the
Okay.
year. It's a solar reading, you said?
Solar return reading. Yeah.
I got one of those readings because my cousin is like, "Oh, it's your birthday." I was like, "Yeah, thank you for my birthday call." She's like, "So how was your reading?" I go, "What reading?" She goes, "Didn't you get an astrological for the year?" And I was like, "What?" She goes, "We all get one." And they're in Brazil, so it's very big in Brazil, which I didn't realize. And she was shocked that I wasn't like so into it. So then after that, I was like, "Oh, now I gotta get a read. I gotta know what she's talking about. I gotta know what all the hype is about." But it is really cool. I will say, and then like as each month goes, it's like, oh, I wonder if that's gonna happen. Oh, then I get too much with my head in the game too.
Yeah.
So then I
Yeah.
have to remember, get out of it because you don't control the world for 12 months now. But do you find people or do you find yourself like or being cautious when doing the astrological reading? Like, do you go super deep? Like, now I'm just curious because I know, like, with one of my readings, like, death was predicted. So I'm just, and then I walk away. I was like, oh, because then that stays in my head. Because I feel
Oh,
like, can you guys go into everything and anything? Is it like psychic with the astrology or no? Like, I don't
but
know.
the astrology is very, like I said, left-brained, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that I didn't bring in that spiritual guidance, that intuitive, the right brain stuff, because it's just what I love to do. And there is definitely an ethical area to consider when doing these readings, and especially astrological readings. I would never predict death. And even if there was indicators on a chart that would very clearly signify it, it's just simply not something that I would bring up because you don't you just don't put a line on somebody. You don't just say this is what it is. Good luck, right? And that's with anything. So I think there has to be a certain carefulness with the way that the messages are interpreted and the way that they are given. I think there is a we definitely have to be ethical and not there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. There's always a
Yeah.
way to navigate an energy. And just because it's on a chart, it doesn't mean it's going to happen either. This is not destiny written in the stars. These are the energies. The planets, as they go through, may activate those energies, but it entirely depends on you as a person. Now, as a reader, then I would say there's a potential for this. There may be, look into exploring another path, right? I could
Yeah.
say something like that. And in this context, I'm making it sound very vague, but I think it's so important that we realize there is always another way, there's always another path, because there is, right?
Yeah.
So that's very important. Yeah.
I find that super fascinating because I have had readings over the years. And I'm going to be honest, one of the annoying things was, where's your natal chart? You got to redo a natal chart. I'm like, but
Mhm.
I know now I've forgotten. But back then I knew it. But I think I love the way that you said ethics.
Mhm.
Because we do this spiritual work, and I know there is this belief system out there, give what you get, no filter. And I don't think you could do a lot of damage with give what you get, no filter too. And thank you
Absolutely.
for bringing that up with the ethics.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's important for everyone to realize, both as a reader and as someone receiving a reading, that there is an element of mutual understanding and respect for one another, and also especially as a reader, to be very cognizant of how someone is coming into the reading, because someone could be in a very, very rough place. And I've dealt with people who have been in places of very deep crises. And I have to tell them, you got to set the boundary. I have to tell them, like, I can give you guidance, but I cannot tell you what to do, and I can't tell you what this is. I can't dive into this person's life on your account. That's not ethical. So,
Yes.
there's just, yeah, people ask about other people a lot, and I always
Don't do
remind them,
that.
yeah, this is about you. I can go into how that person's energy influences you, but I'm not going to go into the whys and the hows of what that person's doing, because then that's game over for me as a
Yeah.
reader. And some kind of karmic camera is going and hit me on the side of the head, right?
I
So,
agree. I think karma, like, it's just bad. I've known readers that will tap into other people's energy because they think it's so cool, almost like a magic trick. And it's like,
yeah.
karmic, it's not good. What are you doing? Oh, I just feel they're not feeling okay. Who asked you to tap in? Don't do it. If you don't
Mhm.
have permission, don't tap in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that you brought that up because that's super important. So for next year, I guess we can expect transformation.
Ooh, you know what? Let me just kind of,
2025.
do I have time to go over the Coles Notes versions of that? Because I realized we didn't really go into it, and I've been me.
That's okay.
All right, cool. So I'm going to speak to the winter solstice and leading up to it, because the winter solstice also includes 2025 going into spring, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen this dramatic shift into AI, artificial intelligence. It's very like Aquarian energy, because Aquarius is ruled by both Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is more about like the structures, and Uranus is more about the cutting edge stuff, like the brand new things that are like way out there. And AI is starting to get to a point now where we've seen enough of it that it's not so much in the realm of Uranus, but more in the realm of Mercury. But that's another topic. So in this age of Pluto and Aquarius as well, we're going to see more dramatic shifts in technology, and a further advancement into AI. As far as health goes, there's an emphasis on the circulation of blood and the spine. So I'm not diagnosing anything here. I'm not saying this is what people need to look out for, but these are, again, themes based on what I've pulled up on the charts, because I work with stellar vitality, which is medical astrology as well. And it's that emphasis of circulation of blood and the spine. Inflammation could be a pretty big thing, a pretty big theme for the winter solstice, but an emphasis on the adrenal glands, especially. So, this is also a time more psychologically of healing that inner child, and where we are in our headspace, because where we sit here influences our our physical bodies, very much so, because our thoughts are vibrations too, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of things that will trigger adrenals, we need to be just a little more cautious with that and find ways to kind of, even though we're in winter, to kind of cool off that our headspace. And of course, no one wants to hear this, but it's not a good time to overload the digestive tract. And because we're going into Christmas, everyone loves to partake in all the delicacies and foods. But this is a time where, because we have Moon in Virgo for this chart, it's a good time to take care of your digestive tract. And if you are gonna overload it, then drink plenty of fluids to go with that as well. And the other thing is, when we talk about our professional world, in dealing with the emotions of our businesses or our careers, this is a good time for planning and strategizing, not so much for doing too much right now. And I think we, have discussed this where it's like we're doing a lot, losing my mind a little bit here, but we need to find a way to slow down and to kind of just strategize and plan things. That's a very Virgo influence too. A time to reassess and reevaluate relationships as well. So especially with acquaintances and coworkers and social groups.
Hmm.
So it's a season of cutting cords or reassessing the cords that we have with these particular peoples. And a little more upheaval from home, maybe renovations, moves, could be an office space. Like I just got my new office space here. So, or in discussions thereof of upheavals. And as far as the weather goes, I'm sorry to say this, especially, being in Ontario here, more heavy precipitation. More
Snow. Are you talking
so
about snow or
the
freezing
S
rain?
word, the S word. Yeah. Well, precipitation in general, and at this time of the year, that's going to be in the form of snow.
Yeah.
Maybe mark your calendars. February 9th and 10th could be a blizzard. I kind of looked ahead to that,
Did
but
you really?
I did. And it's actually, I like looking ahead and seeing like where the worst of it can take place, because I think that's what people really want to know. And I'm just going to go on a limb here and say February 9th and 10th. This is for like Southern Ontario, GTA,
Let's
but
see.
we'll see.
Okay,
Yeah.
this podcast will come out the first week of January. So for those of you that are watching this, let me know if this happens. Can we get a
Yeah.
snowstorm? Because February is usually the worst month anyways. I always get scared of February, gonna be honest. Because over
Yeah.
here we get like the freezing rain. It's like, oh, I don't want to drive in that. I
Yeah.
love snow as long as I don't have to drive in it.
Yeah. If you're looking at it outside, it looks very nice.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. The last thing I want to touch upon is like a little into 2025 as well. We're going to see again a shift, perhaps with government in March. I don't know if that means an early election, but I think there are signs in the chart pointing to some shift in power structures, as well as with our vital forces. We're going to see a lot of vital force being distributed outwardly from our systems. So this is going to be a time to transform ourselves. And it's going to be a period of restlessness, especially going to the spring. I'm looking at the spring equinox chart of 2025 here. So that's like March 21st onward. So there could be some uncertainty with vital force, especially dealing with the stomach. There could be, I'm not saying influenza, but there could be something dealing in the world of influenza. And with the eclipse season in March as well, acidity versus alkaline. We're talking about health here. So we need to be aware of how much acidity we're taking into our system and balancing out with a little bit more alkaline. So I just I just field everything out like the Cole's Notes versions here.
So I am super curious because when you're sharing astrology, you
Mhm.
seem very passionate about the weather. So why? Why that curiosity?
Well, I've always had a very strong fascination with weather. And I don't know if you've ever felt this, but whenever I was outside, especially when I was younger, before a thunderstorm hit, I felt this amazing surge of energy. And I'm just like, I want to be out in this thunderstorm. but I was also frightened of it at the same time. So there was there's always something about the weather, and I've always been fascinated with it. I took a course when I was in university in atmospheric sciences, just always a big thing, but it always comes back into my life. And
Yeah.
now I discovered that you could do astrometeorology, which is weather astrology. And I'm like, this is so cool. I've been spending hours upon hours
Yeah.
pulling up these seasonal charts, these moisture charts, these wind charts to see what's happening and how they relate to events that are happening in the world, but
Yeah.
also coming to this realization that the weather is not only around us, but within us, and how we influence the weather and how the weather influences us with our health, our emotions, and everything. So it's like putting all these
Interesting.
pieces together has been just such an incredible journey. I've been loving it.
I love it. Well, now that you said that and connected the dots for me, like if it's a cloudy day, all of a sudden we got headaches. I know I do. We're lazy. We want to sleep. You want to curl up with like a cup of coffee, hot chocolate, stay inside. If it gets too cold outside, we don't want to go outside.
Mhm.
If the sun comes out, we're all like, yes, outside, exercise. So you're right, the weather does affect us. I never
Yes.
thought of it that way. I didn't even know it was possible to do it with astrology, to be quite honest. So I find like it's so awesome watching how that lights you up. And I was like, wow, that's so cool.
Thank you so much. I'm hoping to do more of it and maybe even to start doing it on a level where people can be like, I'm going on vacation here, or I have my wedding on this day, or, I don't know. We play it by ear, right?
We'll just
So,
have fun. We'll have fun
yeah,
with
having fun with it.
astrology. I have we're coming to the end of our time, but I have absolutely loved having you on. I've This is such a fascinating topic. Again, it's the rabbit hole. We could
It
be here
is.
all day, but we only got an hour, guys. So we have
Yeah.
to limit our time. But please know, I would love to have Daniel back, and we may be doing some live readings for those that are interested. We'll see what Daniel's schedule is for next year and for 2025. But thank you so much, Daniel, for spending this time with us. So goodbye, everybody. And thank you to everybody for listening. Also, if you want to book a reading with Daniel, I'm going to have all his contact information because now you know so much more about readings and what kind of readings.
Yes.
And if you're confused, email him. He'll give you clarity because he's super easy to connect with and he responds back quickly, I find anyways. So just message him if you guys are getting confused or anything about, because it is confusing, right? It's like, what kind of reading do I need? I don't know. Ask the expert, Daniel.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always reach out to me on Instagram, on my email, daniel@mediumguidance.com, and just ask me, and I can give you greater insight and clarity into what would be best for you for that time. And Maria, thank you so, so much for having me once again on your podcast. I
Yes.
love our conversations. I could talk to you for hours and hours about all this stuff. So it's such an honor and such a blessing. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you and goodbye, everybody.
Okay, take care.